Let's change gears and talk about something I'm sure you're going to be discussing this weekend. And joining us to bring us up to date is James Mitchell. He's the same James Mitchell that developed the CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program and served as one of their interrogators, and is also the author of Enhanced Interrogation. He has spent more time with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Abu Zubaydah, questioning them about their philosophy and their Islamic extremist behavior than anyone else probably in the country or maybe the world. Jim Mitchell, welcome back. We had to have you when we found out that 22 more Gitmo detainees are going to be released back maybe to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and others. Is there a danger here that America should be aware of?
Yeah, there is a danger. You know, the belief of those people who want to let those folks go to other countries is that it's somehow going to make us safer. But in 2005, I had a conversation about Gitmo with KSM, and what he told me was that if it wasn't Gitmo, it would be something else. That they use that as a rallying cry, but if Gitmo went away, then they would use the presence of infidels in the Arabian Peninsula or something else. They would just find something to replace it with. The difficulty now with letting people go is what's left is the worst of the worst. And so essentially what you're returning to the battlefield, because he's not transferring prisoners, he's letting terrorists go. What you're doing is returning to the battlefield people who are well-fed, rested, and have had some of the best medical care on the planet.
Yeah, and consider heroes over there, according to some Navy SEALs that I've talked to. Donald Trump agrees with you. This was his tweet. He says, there should be no further releases from Gitmo. These are extremely dangerous people and should not be allowed back onto the battlefield. What are the chances that if these guys are released, that they will be back on the battlefield?
Well, I think there was a study done recently, and they said about 1/3 of the folks who have been released from Gitmo have returned, and some of those have killed Americans. So if what you have left is the worst of the worst, why would you want to take the risk and maybe let 1/3 of those people go back, especially because they're moved into more senior positions than they were before?
All right, let's talk a little bit about this. Osama bin Laden's son finally put on the State Department terror list.
His name is Hamza, one of 23 kids.
Sure, but bin Laden's son, I mean, terror is in his blood. Why did this take so long?
It's hard to know why it took so long. You know, he's been groomed to be a member of al-Qaeda since he was an adolescent. And, you know, he started in, I think, August of 2015 with his voice showing up on these videos, calling for attacks in Washington, D.C., and attacks in France and Israel, and calling for an increase in lone wolf attacks and threatening vengeance for his father's death. So he's rising in the ranks because he's been groomed to rise in the ranks of al-Qaeda. The thing that we have to be concerned about with him is that right now, he's not as famous as he's going to be later. He's exactly the kind of person that we should be capturing and interrogating, because he's going to know the who, what, when, where, and how that will allow us to piece together the puzzle of what their intentions are, who's financing them, how they're moving people, that sort of stuff.
And Jim, we have not questioned almost anyone for 8 years. We have no idea what is simmering below the surface. Meanwhile, the other big story happened yesterday. Our intelligence directors let us know that the Russians did hack into our elections, the DNC, as well as John Podesta and others. They did have some influence, but not in the actual voting. What's your reaction to this?
I don't think anybody in America is surprised to find out that the Russians are interested in how our elections go. Their task really is to try to create disruption and turmoil rather than get a particular person elected. And the fact that we're today, right now, discussing this as if it was some sort of a shock, when we ourselves send entire teams into countries to get people elected or to keep people from being elected, why are we surprised that someone else would do it?
Well, against Russia.
Yeah, James, I got to ask you, were you ever nervous when you were interrogating the worst of the worst?
The only person that ever really made me a little bit nervous was Humbali. And the reason for that is he was an excellent karate guy, and he's got the emotional response of a lizard. You know, so guys like KSM's not scary, Abu Zubaydah not scary, even Khalid bin Atash not scary.
And I hate to tell you, they're all going to be up for parole, move to New York. We don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think President Obama would even let them go. But that should concern everyone. And about the chances of them rehabbing with that mindset, what are the chances of when people say, oh, they've learned a lot in prison, they're not going to go back to their terror ways? You've spoken to them. What do you think?
Well, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. You know, this notion that you can somehow rehabilitate these guys by having them review how they got off the path of the true Muslim man, like you do in some Arab countries, is ridiculous when it comes to men like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed or Abu Zubaydah.
And maybe the people released yesterday.
Jim Mitchell, thank you very much for joining us today, giving us your analysis live from Tampa. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.